Piotr, how are you?
Hello, Murray. So it's been a while. Nice
It
to
has
see
been
you.
a while. It has been a
Yeah.
while, and I have you here straight from Hong Kong, morning in Hong Kong. So I'm most grateful that halfway across the world that you would make some time for us to have a chat this morning, and do so in the interests of anyone who might like to look in our conversation and have a listen and have a watch and learn a little bit about what was our journey about 8 years ago. So I'm particularly grateful that after all this time, you even remember me, let alone a willingness to have a chat together. So thank you so much for being here. And
My pleasure to reconnect.
yeah,
It's
excellent.
nice. Mhm.
Yeah, and it's been nice to be able to just touch base every once in a while along the way and find out sort of the latest in your quite extraordinary story. The whatever details you're comfortable sharing with us today would be welcomed. So maybe, if you will, Piotr, is um, I like to go back to even before we even met, and you decided to have an exploratory chat with a guy like me. Is, if you would, could you, as I've looked back, I should say, as I've looked back on all the different amazing people I've worked with over time, is that something that's in common with all of them I've discovered is that there was significant change, there was significant challenge, there was significant choice personal to them. And that was the cusp of something yet to be discovered. And so, looking back, even before we met, is there anything that you could share for the viewer to tell us a little bit about, okay, what was going on that even gave rise to you thinking that having someone on the outside brought into the inside might be something you wanted to look at?
Well, it's a little difficult to say whether it was at that moment or perhaps now from the perspective of several more years that
Yes.
I realized that throughout my life, well, I was not really properly managing my career and career path. That's something that I've missed out on. I've never really never had a proper mentor in any of the career paths that I did. So that was kind of a big hole in my life, and that resulted in that kind of meandering path of my professional path. So as you remember, my passion to begin with when I was a university student was astronomy. That's what I studied. And then I went on to a PhD program. I studied first in Warsaw, in Poland, then I moved to Canada to continue towards a PhD. That did not end as I hoped. I did not finish my PhD. I had to leave, and I was cast adrift a bit. So I started working in finance. It was kind of a default path for people with, my skills at that point. And within the world of finance, again, I was cast a bit adrift. So there were opportunities. I was good at what I was doing. However, I never really had a particular goal. And at some point, well, 10 years later, I realized that this is not really what I want to do for the rest of my life. I did try various mentoring facilities, like within the company. There was a mentoring program, career management program. The more I participated in them, the more I realized that that's not really what I would say sparks joy. I really don't. I developed also almost like a revulsion towards the climbing corporate ladder and the perspective of becoming a senior manager and then AVP and head possibly of something. Really, that had no appeal to me. So I started looking for alternatives. Like basically, I wondered what else can I do at that stage in my life, and was relatively, from some points of view, was a bit late. I was in my mid 40s, late 40s. So I did ask for help. I did ask somebody I knew at work who was involved in that mentorship program, basically what else I can do. I told him that that's not really working for me. And he recommended Murray to me. He knew you. And he said, yeah, I know a person who it sounds like might help you. And I met with you. And yeah, the rest is history.
That's so interesting because, after all this time, I've forgotten some of the details. I had forgotten the astronomy part. And now that just comes, flooding back into my awareness.
Mhm.
And I had actually forgotten how it is that you came to know of me in the first place.
Mhm.
So that's very interesting to retrace those steps. And so we chatted and then we met, as I recall.
Yeah.
And we dabbled in some possibilities, and thank you for the context. Appreciate that. I acknowledge that it's a fairly big deal when people decide that they're going to engage someone from the outside and bring them into the sort of inside of their experience. We met, and then you're at this choice point. Would you mind commenting on, how did I get the privilege and the pleasure of actually engaging with you? What lent itself to you deciding that you would have us have an opportunity to co-create together?
I, from the perspective of those several years, it's going to be probably difficult to consider my thinking, but
Fair enough.
I definitely needed help, and it sounded at that time that it was it's a good idea to bring somebody who with a fresh perspective and with some experience in guiding people. And you sounded like a person who has helped many others before me. It has to be a genuine connection as well. When we met first, of course, I kind of looked for red flags. Is this guy going to to really help me, or perhaps just take my money? And I don't know.
Sure,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
that's kind of I think it's a healthy attitude to that. So,
totally.
yeah, you sounded like a genuine person who wants to help people. And so it was a bit of a risk signing up for the whole year. But I judged the risk worth taking, and I was lucky to be in a position I could afford it without really much sacrifice. So I think, and I saw it as a bit of an investment in my career, in my life, in the second part of my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for retracing those steps, and it actually takes me back to some of those initial conversations where we first met. And I in fact love the healthy skepticism. I've had others say, coach, like I never even imagined like even being in a relationship with anybody like that, let alone you. so it's good. It's good. And I remember you being, careful and discerning, and you're a thoughtful human being. And so why would it be any different in this particular situation? And spending a year of time together is, a a really meaningful commitment to one's own development and to being in this kind of, what I often refer to as a partnership. So if you will, if we could go a bit into the journey of our time together. We had all those months together, and as I like to ask others, whatever you might like to share about A and B part. A part is process. So method. Did this guy? Was there any? What was it? What did you guys like do together all this time? Like, so from a methodology standpoint and a process, if there's anything to comment on there, and I remember, some of the conversations that we had, and then the B part is what might I expect working with a guy like this if I decided I was going to take the leap of faith and embark on an engagement with him. So anything that you can recall through the lens of time would be welcomed on the process side and on what's it like to work with this fella from your perspective.
On the process side, it's a bit hazy. I remember there were some exercises, some written exercises, but I don't quite remember what they were anymore.
Yeah,
but what stuck in mind were conversations. And I think that's probably the best, what made the most difference. The kind of talking through things.
Yes.
And I think as a final result of all these conversations, I would say that you helped me change the way I think about work, about career, about priorities in life, about change, about what change is possible, and how to approach uncertainty in life, how to approach planning and making a big leap from the kind of mindset point of view. So I think that that change of mindset is probably the best, most lasting, most significant outcome. Not necessarily self-knowledge, although I'm sure there was some self-knowledge that I've got from it. The particular exercises or the written exercises, I don't quite remember what we did, and if there was anything very significant I've learned. Perhaps at that time there was, but it's the thinking about the possibility of making a big change in my life. Suddenly, when we started, I had a lot of hesitation, like, oh, is that possible? Is it possible to quit your job and do something different? You kind of made me think, or allowed me to think, that change is possible. And I shouldn't be as afraid. I should trust myself. I should trust that after I make that leap, things will work out, or I will find ways to make things work out. That things will fall into place, even though I don't quite yet know how.
Yes.
After a while, that basically, trust that they will fall in place, that there will be people who will help me, that, I will find ways to make them happen and to succeed.
Yeah, this is such a lovely opportunity, because it takes me right back into some of those conversations where, you're such a thoughtful person, and you have this charisma about you as well, and you'd had this long track record of success in the various things that you had done, and I got a little bit of experience with the sorts of things that engage you more personally as well. And so there was all these wonderful dimensions of Piotr. And I have, the blessing within me to be able to see into that and all the possibilities that that reveals. And here you were at this crossroads time, exploring new possibilities. And what a privilege it was to explore that with you. So thank you for that. And maybe on the B part then is, what might you offer for those who are contemplating this sort of thing as to, what were the dynamics like of us working together? Which was, it was kind of like, it wasn't a linear curve, as I recall, and there was times that you challenged me and I might have challenged you. And so whatever, what I love about these conversations is they can be raw and real. And so whatever you have to offer.
That's the word, linear. That's the word that came to my mind while you were asking this question. And the process was not linear. So indeed, it's we tried. You tried at the beginning several different approaches, as I understand. Some of them I was a little more warm towards, others maybe less. I tried doing I tried to do everything as requested. Some with more enthusiasm than others, but I kind of understand that that's probably normal. You have probably a whole library of methods, and not all of them will work with everybody. And also the path when you are working towards making convincing yourself that you can make a big change in your life and then making that change, that path is not turning on a switch or not like it's basically, again, that word, non-linear. It's you meander a bit, you explore one direction, then might not work out immediately, then you start exploring another direction. Explore one technique, maybe another technique. And in the end, at some point, and I hope that's with all your clients, at some point, light switches on. And for me, it was relatively late during that year, as I remember. Mm-hmm. The light may have flickered a bit earlier, but I think it was relatively late in the engagement that I made the decision to seriously explore. Yes, basically, at some point you go with your gut. At least I did. There was something, some possibility, some idea that felt right. Mm-hmm. And I may have thought about that earlier. Mm-hmm. But I think what you did is made me think that this actually could become real. If I had thought about it earlier, it's kind of said, oh no, it's just too much of a how can I ever do that? How can I ever quit my job? How can I ever move? It's like, that's not possible. I have so many obstacles. But what you made me, how you changed my mindset is that it started appearing as a real possibility, mm-hmm. A possibility that I would have to explore. It's not again like turning a switch. There were steps towards it, but I could lay out those steps, mm-hmm. and then pursue them one by one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That's so well captured. I refer to it as the inner work for the outer work. That there's things that simply must have their time and their space to process within before it sort of bubbles up to the surface, and we can actually see it with even more conscious eyes and go, look at this. Wow, this is ringing to me as now possible. And then what happens from there. And so, as I recall, you and I completed our year, and and again, forgive me too, because my mind is somewhat fallible, but there was still lots of effervescing that was going on even at the year point that we were together. As you say, that was, maybe coming closer to the surface. And I remember that, well, I remember that our experience together reminded me that this could be tough. Like, we so want that sufficient level of clarity, and we, of course, any human would want it earlier than later, but it has its own agenda. And sure, if I had, maybe there would have been other ways later on that I discovered that would have helped you get there at the 4-month mark, but it was what it was, and here it was. And so our time together concluded, and I heard from you, which is wonderful. Like, we stay in touch, and I heard from you sometime later, and I marveled at what I learned. All the different changes that you made. So anything that you might want to share to, you've got people on watching now, Piotr, who are all like, waiting, like, okay, what, like, I hear significant, I hear big change, and please give me something.
So of course, what happened is that I quit my job in a financial institution in Toronto, and moved to Hong Kong. Why Hong Kong? Well, I'm married to a person from Hong Kong, so that was kind of an obvious choice. But just moving to a different continent, different country. That was something that I realized I want to do. I want a change of life. That's not the first time I did it in my life. I moved from Poland to Canada when I was a student. But then I realized that in order to kind of start a new pace in my new chapter in my life, I wanted a very different scene. And Hong Kong sounded wonderful. I had visited as a tourist several times. I knew I would like it. I kind of perhaps dreamt a bit of maybe one day living there. So that was part that kind of I brought this brought this kind of dream to reality. And the second thing was that I wanted to completely change my career. I wanted to quit the corporate life. My job involved a lot of project management, product management. It's kind of very mind-numbing work after a while. I'm sure there are people who love it and it's perfect, but it's not for me. I discovered or rediscovered love of writing, in particular journalism. I recalled that that was my very, very early passion. As a teenager in high school, I was the editor of a high school newsletter back in Poland. So I rediscovered that, and I decided that this would be my new area, new chapter. That the new chapter would involve journalism in some part. So I explored opportunities in Hong Kong in particular. A year before moving to Hong Kong, while visiting, I actually went to local university here and checked out the journalism program. I found out they have a 1-year master's program, which sounded perfect to me. I enrolled, and the day I moved, or the day after we moved, which was in August 2013, I became a student again, full-time student.
Accepted, right?
Yes. So this was a 1-year program, which is very convenient. And you know what? I had met people who did take a break from work and mid-career in their 40s. I had met these people before, and that sounded like something that helped them to kind of recharge. And I felt like this is a very good option for me as well. just take a year off. And I was lucky to be in a position that I could. I know not everybody could, but I was lucky in a position that I could take a year off, become a full-time student, even if a career change would result in me in my income going down for a while. And you warned me that that's what's going to happen if you change career. Quite often you take your income goes down for a while. So I was prepared for it. I was okay. I was in a situation I could afford it. So I studied for a year journalism. It was a very rewarding experience, partly because I learned something completely new, something that I was actually passionate about, partly because I was interacting with mostly people younger than me. And that was kind of a very nice and refreshing perspective. And also becoming a student later in life, in your midlife, it gives you a little different perspective on learning and university. You're not stressed out like those young people for whom it's the beginning of their career. Everything seemingly depends on the next grade and so on. For me, it was basically for my I wouldn't say pleasure, but for personal development. Mm-hmm. But there was not a big stress, not a big pressure. If it didn't work out, if I failed, it's okay. I could always go back to my older job. It's fine. It's like I had this lifeboat there waiting. So, but things worked out in a way that I didn't quite expect. They worked out very well. After graduation, I quickly found a job. It turns out, it wasn't like the dream job, journalistic job in let's say New York Times or some other prestigious magazine or South China Morning Post here in Hong Kong. But there are plenty of jobs for journalists with a certain experience, and I have an experience in finance. So there are plenty of jobs in financial journalism in Hong Kong, what they call institutional press here, so industry press. Not big names, but very vibrant market. So I wrote about finance for 4 years. The work was sometimes rewarding, sometimes a little onerous. So as every work, I was probably working in a more junior position than I would otherwise if I became a journalist in my 20s or 30s. But I kind of enjoyed it for a while. Later, I realized that basically what I was able to do is marry my journalism and knowledge of finance to establish myself.
Yes.
But then, you start looking around. You start looking around for other opportunities. And now I work for a financial institution, not as a journalist anymore, in a more comfortable kind of area. Journalism at some point required me writing one story a day, which became onerous after a while, especially writing about mutual funds. After a while, it's not that exciting. So I'm still working finance. I do financial research and regulation, and I do write research reports. I'm a content manager of a website. So
cool.
Kind of marrying these two.
Yeah. I love how you really took two of these ingredients that represented your natural talents and gifts and brought them together and made something really creative out of it. And obviously the story continues to unfold, and this latest chapter I'm hearing fresh, which is really interesting. So I appreciate that. So big change. I mean, looking into your story, I was always so inspired by your story, if not a little bit envious too, is that, change your country, change your culture, change where you're living, change your career, go back to school. I mean, you hardly left a stone unturned, Piotr. and so when I look back at it and think, well, yeah, well, if an individual is going to make that kind of, initiate that kind of transition, then maybe it's no wonder it took a little while to effervesce and reach the surface of your experience. I also recall, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I also recall that from the employer that you came from, you were able to keep doors open and you had built good relationships there. And so there was those connections when you talk about you could have fallen back. If, I think you had this confidence that you knew that you would be well received.
Yes, I made an arrangement with the employer. Basically, I took a leave of absence for 1 year. Again, my boss was understanding and the HR was understanding. They gave me a leave of absence. So if indeed things didn't work out in Hong Kong within a year, I could have possibly gone back.
Right.
That didn't turn out to be necessary. But
Yeah.
they were flexible, and I still keep in touch with people back in Toronto once in a while.
Excellent. Well, just having even a little bit of reassurance to know that, you're still held to some degree as you embark out and fully adopt your adventurous spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So in closing, and I'm grateful for your time today, and I want to respect your time, is looking back now through the rear view mirror and tracing back to our time together, is there anything that you take with you? Is there anything that you can, in even some small way, trace back to our time together, and that significant commitment that you made to engage with a guy like me over the course of a year? Anything to share?
Well, I've learned, actually, that my biggest lesson, probably from the very highest level, is that the best changes in life are those that you actually pursue yourself, not necessarily what falls in your lap. I have lived. Most of my career was basically I took opportunities that fell in my lap. I didn't necessarily pursue them. But when I decided to, there were 2 times when I pursued very consciously a change in my life. First, when I was about to emigrate from Poland and to go to university abroad. There was a multi-step process that I decided on, and I did that. And the second time, again, around immigration, around moving to Hong Kong and changing career. Those 2 are the most significant, most rewarding changes in my life. And they were not things that fell into my lap. There's things that I had to pursue. And while I was living in Canada, this faith, trust that I could actually embark on something new and pursue a career change like that, kind of eroded and went away. And you helped me rekindle the trust that I can do that. So yeah, that's what I remember as the most significant change. And I said it earlier, the change in mindset, that making a big leap is possible. And it's doable you have to find the ways. And I trust that most people would find ways. It might not be for me, I guess it was relatively easy. I had support, family support. So, but the biggest change was in the mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so generous of you to share that encouragement to others who are maybe dancing on the thresholds of these sorts of things and looking in on your story and maybe having their own sense of what's possible renewed for them. through your willingness to share. And in closing, how would you characterize the before and the after of your experience? Is that a fair question? Do you mind me asking that? Like, so before, when you were in Toronto and you were in financial services, and now your quality of life and quality of experience now, how might you distinguish the two?
I'm much more excited about my work. Of course, again, this wasn't a linear path. Even after I moved, after I embarked on the new career, it wasn't all a smooth ride. There were some bumps, but after it's been what, seven years now, I'm in a quite comfortable place. I'm up for promotion apparently in my job. So yeah, I work in a very nice environment, and I enjoy what I do. I write. I do financial research, so it's engaging work. It's a good environment. I traveled a lot when travel was possible.
Yes.
Before COVID. Yeah, I see myself staying in this role for a while, and living in Hong Kong. I still, 7 years later, feel quite excited. It's actually, every weekend feels like I'm on a tropical holiday. Really, it's really nice. You have to also, it's a different mindset. Hong Kong is not for everybody. There are some expats who come here and hate it and leave after 6 months. They cannot stand it. I love it. I love the vibrancy of the city. I love even the weather. I love the weather. It might be too hot for some people, but I like it. Yeah. I like there's something new, in the city to explore almost everywhere you go. I love the culture. I'm, learning Cantonese. It's been a while. It's taking a long time. Difficult.
Yeah, one of the toughest languages in the world, as I understand it, to pick up. Yeah.
Yes. But yes, I think it's I'm very happy I made that change. I made that leap. I'm in a very comfortable situation here. I see myself staying a bit longer. You never know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm in no rush to leave. Yeah, so.
I remember another flash. You were so dedicated to the process of your own unfolding. As you said, some of the things that I might propose, you jumped in, and others you nevertheless committed yourself to, even though you might have had, I really wonder, like, really? And yet you always applied yourself, and you always gave yourself to it. And quite aside from anything that I introduced into our collaboration together, is that you're the kind of human that really dedicates himself to the commitments that he makes. And look, such an amazing manifestation of what can be possible. And I so appreciate you saying that, there's certain, life still offers all kinds of bumps. It's not all of a sudden that I arrived at the promised land and life was smooth sailing. Yeah. But it's yours. It's what you created. It's born in you. And it reminds me, many years ago, I knew someone with Hebrew influence, and there was an expression, the word was called beshert, which translated apparently is meant to be, from all that you're sharing and the joy that you have in your life now. It very much seems that way, that it's beshert for you. So,
yeah, actually, one thing that I want to add, is that. I mentioned earlier the trust that things will fall into place, and that you will figure things out. And that proved right in many different ways here. You know, after moving here, some things like almost magically materialize themselves, and they did work out. You could almost see that things are falling into place as you are ready for them, and everything worked out.
I'm so glad you
in the end
mentioned that.
Yes.
You know, in current day, I speak a lot in my current work about one's true nature. That I hold this belief that we each have a true nature. And that to the extent that we commit ourselves to understanding that true nature, finding faith in it, and learning to trust in it by deploying it out there in the world, then life takes on a new magic and a mystery and a wonder. And you exemplify that in what you're sharing here. That isn't it amazing that when we find trust in ourselves, we also realize that we're enormously creative and we're very intelligent, and we've you know, we have this resourcefulness that we can figure out what we need to figure out. But it does require a good dose of courage, and I'm inspired by the fact that you're the kind of person who tapped that courage within himself to create what you have in terms of your life experience. So I'm most grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. It's really good to see you. I'm reminded of that charisma that you have, a very charming way about you. So it's really good to see you and reconnect with you. So thank you again for your generosity to share openly for others who are looking in. They're undoubtedly contemplating, you know, some shifts for themselves, and to have a testament to, you know what, you got it within you. As you said earlier, I believe we all have it within us. It's whether or not that can be turned on and ignited. So thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Lovely talking to you.
Lovely talking.